Ladies and gentlemen, today I want to talk about 14th of July, what the French people, they call Bastille Day. What is Bastille Day? It was a day that the people of France, they said enough is enough. They stormed the prison and released all the political prisoners. Today, the 14th of July, France is commemorating the storming of the Bastille, which happened in 1789. This day marked the start of the French Revolution. Imagine a country where you have absolute rulers. Imagine a country where the people who are ruling, they don't pay tax. They ask the masses, the poor people, to pay tax, and they don't have any say. And there were 5 factors that led to the French Revolution. Today in Africa, many African countries, they fool us with elections. They say it's democracy. And you look at more of the characteristics that led to the French Revolution in 1789. We still have them today in most African countries. But instead of the people to sit and challenge and change the system, you see them running and dying in the Mediterranean. Nobody is going to fix your country. The French people, they said enough is enough. Today, when the French people, they say they have independence, it's because they say enough is enough. Less than 1% of the French population, they cannot be governing them, and they don't pay tax. They receive tax from them. They don't have a say in the government. They say enough is enough. They were fighting for their children and their children's children. Today, most Africans, they just complain. They cannot take the laws into their hands. They tell you in your constitution that you are sovereign. But some few people, 1%, they control your country. They control your world. If you look at these 5 factors, which are the causes of the French Revolution, similar things that are reminiscent in 1789 in France, they are still happening in most African countries. In France, you had what we call the estate system. You have the clergy, you have the nobility, they don't pay tax. They control the country, they take money from you, they don't ask your opinion on how to run the country. The people look at it, they say enough is enough. We are going to storm the Bastille. The middle class pay tax. They have no say in the government. And majority of the people, the poor people, they were the middle class, the working class. Another factor again, which is reminiscent to what we are seeing in Africa today, absolutism. As I tell you, election does not mean democracy, because they keep on fooling us in Africa. Some people, they will be in power for 50 years. They say it's democracy. So the other factor that the French people say enough is enough was absolutism. The king of France believed he had absolute power. And he believed the power comes from God. What the king of France was doing, he used to look after less than 2%. His friends, he take care of them. We see in Africa, we have oligarchies. People are in power, father to son. They stay there for a long time. They please some few people you call elite. That was what was happening in France before 1789. That's what was happening. And the people say enough is enough. The third factor again, when the people say enough is enough in France, was enlightened idea, new ideas on how to run the society and government. French philosophers like Montesquieu, Voltaire, Jean-Jacques Rousseau, they brought enlightened ideas and the people embraced it. They started discussing that this is not how they should run our country. And taking into consideration that we are taxpayers, they said enough is enough. We are going to storm the Bastille. Another factor factor that contributed to the storming of the Bastille in 1789 was food shortage. There was low supply of bread. There was lack of wheat. We see today in many African countries, we don't have wheat. They are complaining, increase in price, cost of living. That is what was happening in France before they stormed the Bastille in 1789. We are seeing the same things that happened in France before 1789 happening in Africa. But what do people do? They take boats, they pass through the Mediterranean, they die in the seas, instead of challenging the people who are receiving tax from them. The last factor that I will talk about was the American Revolution. It inspired the French because the Americans, they got their independence from Britain. So it inspired the French citizen to storm the Bastille and overthrow an absolute government. So ladies and gentlemen, if you see all this history, I study European history in the Cameroons. When you study something, do you study it to just sit on it, or do you study it to practice it? That is the question. Because today, we see the same thing that was happening in France before the storming of the Bastille happening in many African countries today. And we sit quiet and we support it. No road, no hospital, no pipe-borne water, no modern hospital. We see all those things. Most African countries have been hijacked. I saw, President Ramaphosa saying that we are not beggars. Oh yes, we are beggars. If you are a president in an African country, why should you come abroad and be telling Macron you're not beggars? If you are independent, if you're sovereign, you don't need to listen to Mr. Macron. President Ruto of Kenya said, if they don't come for this meeting in the West or to meet Americans, to meet Commonwealth or Francophonie, they threaten them. How can you be a president? You're not sovereign, you're not independent, and they threaten you, you go. The African leaders are not willing to die for their people. They are not willing to fight for their people. African leaders, they sit and complain. They are presidents. They are running the country. If a president is complaining about Western countries, then what are we, common people, what are we going to do? The Uganda president, Museveni, was saying they went to talk for peace talk with Gaddafi, and NATO asked them to go back. They are school children. So why do we keep on having leaders in Africa who cannot fight for us? Why do we? We need the Shaka Zulus. We need the Patrice Lumumba. We need the real African leaders who will fight for us. African leaders who are scared. If you are a president of a country, you keep on complaining that the West is forcing you to do this, then why are you a leader? We Africans, we need new leaders who will think. And how can we do this? African countries that the leaders are behaving, only complaining, it means they are absolute rulers, they are dictators. And it is time for most African countries to storm the Bastille so that one day we are going to celebrate what? Liberty, equality, and fraternity, as the French do every 14th of July. Once more, my name is Maitre Mola Alex Lisinge. This video is for you to think. I'm not encouraging violence, but however, when you study something, history, physics, or any other subject, you study it because you want to be enlightened, and one day you have to come out of that dark corner. This has been a party political broadcast by myself, Maitre Mola Alex Lisinge, the leader of British Cameroon National Party.